It's a truly amazing story.
Maybe she's active.
By tracking its daily life, researchers will help Pera reveal the most intimate moments in the life of what is surely the strangest animal on Earth. The high plateau of Tasmania, the southernmost link in a mountain chain that stretches the whole length of Australia's eastern coast. When the winter blizzards blow in from the Southern Ocean, life here gets tough. Yet, even here, the platypus thrives. Its thick fur provides near-perfect insulation as it forages for a sparse living in the frozen tarns. The spring thaw turns mountain streams into torrents. Humans are rare in the remote Tasmanian wilderness, but platypuses are plentiful. There's prey to catch with their probing bills under every rock. Shrimps and worms, and the larvae of aquatic insects.
I've looked for platypus up and down the east coast of Australia, but the wild rivers of Tasmania are the greatest place to find them. But even here, they're difficult to see. They seem to meld into the water and rocks, and then suddenly disappear.
When Europeans first encountered it, the platypus seemed almost too weird to be real. The name comes from the Greek for flat-footed. Yet it was the creature's duck bill that most fascinated 19th century zoologists. "200 years on, we're just beginning to understand what a remarkable instrument it is. In fact, there's a lot about this secretive animal that we're only finding out now. As the early naturalists discovered, the platypus is not an easy animal to study. Its burrows may run back into the banks for 30 metres. And they soon learned to be cautious. They found that the venomous spur of an angry male caused pain and swelling that lasted for weeks. So it wasn't till the 1880s that scientists confirmed that the platypus really did lay eggs. By the early 1900s, they were learning how to keep platypuses alive in captivity. In 1944, naturalist David Flay successfully bred from a captive pair called Jack and Jill.
Months ago, David Flay noticed Jill was building a nest. He knew she was building up her milk supply. He then dug down and uncovered the burrow. To his delight, he found a youngster, already well grown.
But this would be the only platypus born in captivity for 50 years. And even today, little is known about how they breed in the wild. A quiet valley in northern Tasmania, in the headwaters of the South Esk River. An unassuming farm dam proves an ideal site for biologist Nina Kosh. She needs to trap a female platypus, the first step in an ambitious project.
It's really unbelievable that these farm dams can be such a good place for platypus to live in. They seem to be enormously productive, ideal habitat for females to breed in.
I heard about Nina's work in Tasmania and came over to join her. Perhaps she may be able to help us in our quest to find breeding platypus.
Nina has been fascinated by the platypus ever since she saw one on TV as a child. Now she's come all the way from Germany to take part in a 2-year study. The aim? To find out more about how female platypuses raise their young. First, Nina measures the platypus's exact dimensions. The tiny craters in her leathery bill are receptors. Some are sensitive to touch, others to the minute electrical impulses emitted by her prey.
Just keep on. Yeah, that will do. Be probably all enough. Not healthy enough.
Next, Nina attaches a tiny radio transmitter to the platypus's fur. It needs to be tested thoroughly before next year's full-scale breeding study. Nina decides to call the female Shy, after a platypus character in a children's book. Within days, Nina has identified the precise location of one of Shy's sleeping burrows on an island in the dam.
We've tracked Shy for a couple of days now, and we could follow her to this island. And she's sleeping right here in her burrow, and we are going to put an infrared video camera in so we can see what she's doing in her burrow.
Just before dawn, Shy returns to sleep. For Nina and her partner Marcus Utesh, this is the first view of a platypus underground.
There she is. She's coming in.
Next year, they'll try to get a camera inside the burrow of a breeding platypus.
That is absolutely great. Wow.
A few weeks later, Nina and Marcus find a baby platypus near the dam. It's only just emerged from the nest. Soon after, they find another, bigger youngster.
This baby looked much more like an adult. It weighed 610 grams, so double the size of the one that we caught before. We released this baby in one of the farm dams, and then it started immediately to feed along the border of the lake. We tried the next day to see it again. I sat on the pontoon and paddled towards the little platypus. He just stopped feeding and suddenly even came closer to me. He was by far more curious than afraid.
Nina is hooked. This will be an ideal location for next year's study. The only other animals on Earth that are even distantly related to the platypus are the echidnas. Like the platypus, the short-beaked echidna has looked much the same since the age of the dinosaurs. It too has evolved a highly specialised mouth, not a bill, but a beak, which can be used as a crowbar if need be, and a long sticky tongue to pull ants and termites from deep within their nests. Despite their different lifestyles, The echidna and the platypus share one crucial characteristic. They're the only surviving members of an ancient group of egg-laying mammals, the monotremes.
That's faster.
Peggy Rismiller and Mike McKelvey have been tracking and studying echidnas for 15 years. What they've discovered about the echidna's breeding cycle may help David Parer in his pursuit of the platypus.
That's Whisper.
Up to a dozen echidnas at a time may be carrying transmitters.
Okay. It's always worth seeing what Hari's doing.
What Hari's doing is looking for a mate. Mostly, echidnas lead solitary lives, but when a female comes on heat, males will gather from far and wide.
But the females emit a scent, and the scent is called a pheromone, and it's something that humans often can't smell, but obviously the males can smell it. The pheromone, of course, would be able to go cross-country on wind and attract the males. And we've seen males cross this peninsula several times and then eventually end up with a female.
Hari and several other males are already here. And Whisper is on his way.
Yep, he's there.
Whisper joins what's called an echidna train, a group of males all paying court to a single female.
Okay. She had no burrow over here?
A train can stay in place for up to a week, with the males constantly jockeying for position. They must be patient, but ready for instant action. Mating will take place just once, when the female decides that the time and the partner are right. To try to capture the elusive courtship ritual of the platypus, David travels to the far north of Queensland. Here, in the tropical rainforest, the mating season has already begun. This female is feeding hard to ready herself for the rigours of motherhood. Every 40 seconds or so, she must surface to breathe. This is when she's most vulnerable. Eyes and ears are open wide, alert for danger. But as soon as she dives, she shuts them tight. Using only the sensors in her bill, she's built up a detailed mental map of her feeding ground. And she knows its inhabitants too, especially the resident cormorant. The white-faced heron minds its own business. The cormorant minds the platypuses. Each time the platypus dives, the cormorant follows, snapping up shrimp and small fish flushed out by the foraging platypus. And if the platypus rests too long between dives, the cormorant lets her know it. In this particular river system, almost every pool has several resident platypuses and a single cormorant ready to exploit them. The other inhabitants of the pool give the platypus no trouble at all. The azure kingfishers are peaceable neighbours too. They may occasionally snap up fish and shrimp she drives to the surface, but at least they don't harass her to dive for them. Most platypuses have a broader home range than a single pool. This muddy tributary to the main stream is a favourite feeding ground. Platypuses make their way up the creek at all hours of the day and night to feed. They can sense the vibrations of their prey through the receptors in their bills.
I've been here for about 3 months now and been desperately trying to find a place where the platypus are courting. I think we might be onto something here. This is Fern Flat. It appears to be dominated by a male, and he does his patrolling, and again it appears that there's a female who I think is just coming up to her burrow or area that she spends a lot of time at now.
As the light begins to fade, the platypuses start to make their way further up the narrow creek. There's even better feeding where it runs through cleared farmland, but the platypuses will only venture there at night.
This is an ideal creek to film platypus with an infrared camera. I really like using infrared cameras because you can capture behaviours at night that no one's ever seen before. We put up a red light. The platypus can see the red light, but they don't seem to be disturbed by it. Sitting there beside the bank of the river with the water running through my boots and the legs of the tripod in the water, as the animals slowly worked their way up towards me, they would stop and glance up and then keep on coming. They were totally unafraid. In the first hour after dark, 6 platypus passed me. And then a water rat appeared. Water rats are about the same size as a platypus, but much fiercer.
A few nights later, David Perrer sets up his infrared equipment on a bridge overlooking the main river. Just below the bridge, a big male platypus has established his home range. But tonight, he has a challenger from further up the river. The resident male is grooming himself on a log, apparently unaware of the intruder. Despite being caught by surprise, the resident male has won the encounter easily. He hasn't had to use his most damaging weapon. The poisonous spur on his hind leg is fed by a venom gland that in the breeding season reaches its maximum size. Day and night now, the big male patrols his home range. He's spotted another male lurking behind a stump. Without hesitation, he steams into battle. Whether platypuses regularly use their spurs in these encounters, or whether they're weapons of last resort, we don't know. In this case, the resident male is triumphant, and a female is ready to be courted. The male grasps the female's tail, and the courtship dance begins. The dance can continue for 20 minutes or more. Whether the female is courted and mated by many males, or just one, is something else we don't know for sure. Finally, it looks as though the male mounts the female and mating takes place. The bare patch on her tail may be a sign that she's been courted often in recent days. Now she's returning to her nesting burrow. 1 or 2 eggs, perhaps even 3, are on the way. Healesville Sanctuary in southern Australia. Much of what we know about platypus mating and breeding has been learned by Les Fisk and his colleagues from the captive animals at Healesville Sanctuary. For 10 years, a male and female platypus have lived in this elaborate artificial world. Through a maze of tunnels, pipes and tanks, video cameras record their every move. Two years ago, for the first time since David Flay's success in the 1940s, Fisk managed to breed platypuses in captivity. For most of the year,